There's Mary. There we go.
Sneaks and hides. Let's see.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you? Welcome.
Good, thank you.
So, how do you pronounce your name so I don't get it wrong? Is it Angela Rodell?
This is a good question. Half of my family says Rodel, the other half says Rodell, so there's pretty much no way you can go wrong.
And then Alexandra, is it Shaniavska?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. All right. Just making sure. I'm turning on my light, trying to get my lighting okay.
Yeah, I moved around a couple of places to make sure I was lit up. Oh, Jose.
How's everyone doing?
Good. We're in the heat of selections for our Bulgarian cohort for the next, for 21-22. So it's been an interesting week. Lots of really talented, interesting Bulgarian scholars and students. So it's been fun.
Well, we have Iskra Ivanov coming in the spring, I
I
hope.
love Eastern Ivanov. Yes, yes.
Is there any chance it's going to not happen?
No, we're not going there mentally. It's going to happen.
It's happening. Okay.
Didn't they just find some kind of medical treatment in Britain? So it's all good.
I know. I hope.
Iskrin is totally fantastic. So I hope there will be nothing standing in his way to come in and be part of your program, because he's a really great guy.
Yeah, we're so excited to have him come.
We just hosted an orientation last week for our Polish grantees who are departing this year, hopefully, January. But we did a pre-departure orientation for them online, so they feel that, it's happening.
Good. That's exciting.
Excellent.
So it was really nice, yeah.
Jose, hello.
Jose. Yay.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
A little sleepy, but I'm okay.
Hi, James.
How did Leslie Davis get involved in this?
It was sent out to IU. So here I am. I wanted to see you.
Oh, really? I thought this was Texas only.
No.
Well, we got a few people,
and I brought with me a potential Fulbrighter from Western Michigan.
Ooh,
Okay.
exciting.
All right, cool. All right.
Well, it was initially Texas only, but then we got a request from IU, so we went, okay, sure. Why not?
I can see why you'd need their help, just a little bar there. From the Midwest to the Southwest.
And all the way up to Alaska, because Mark Parker invited me to join.
Oh my goodness.
Exciting. Well, maybe some of the people who are, the speakers I'll introduce too, but maybe everyone should just in the chat introduce themselves. Like your name and, your, I guess if you're a student, then what you're studying, maybe your major, or just whatever you want to say about yourself. I'll say something about myself.
Okay.
You guys type faster than I do.
And Mary, are you not an alumna of the Fulbright Bulgaria program?
I am.
I want to make that clear here. So.
I am. I did Fulbright Bulgaria in 1995-96.
We were just a year different. I was 96, 97, but I was a student researcher then.
Yep. It was quite a time period to be in Bulgaria, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, we have some more people who should be joining us. but I mean, okay, here we go. Maybe we'll wait a few minutes. Sonia, yay.
Sorry, I just came from a.
Hey!
I'm very, very sweaty and gross. Angela!
Hey, this is great. Sorry, we went to grad school together. So this is a very big treat. I didn't realize you'd be joining us.
Well, Sonia is, what's your title? Fulbright coordinator at UT, or what's the
Yes.
actual title?
Right, chair and advisor. So I'm the campus-wide Fulbright wrangler. My counterpart is Rebecca French, who works through Texas Global. So she handles the administrative stuff and the spreadsheets and setting up all the interviews. I'm the brainstormy, running writing workshops. I supervise the interview sessions. I'm kind of the go-to person for the things that don't require all that administrative work, for which I'm very grateful to Rebecca. So I've been doing this for like 3 years or so, and we're really thrilled because UT is the highest public university earner of Fulbrights.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Great. Wow, so you surpassed Arizona State. I thought they were always kind of on the leading edge. So congratulations.
Well, anyway, we're up there, and that's really impressive for a state school. So we're looking to build it up. So starting this year, I've initiated a series of grant writing workshops. So we're pairing them up with our information sessions. So I run grant writing workshops for those applying for the ETA, and then separate ones for those that are applying for the research and study grants. So I've got a whole dog and pony show for that as well. And we want to bump that out eventually to support grant writing across the university. So inshallah, next year we can kind of spread that out some more.
Well, I noticed you don't have your June and July dates up yet, but when they come up for information sessions or grant writing sessions, just let us know if you can, and we can circulate that, because we want our students to get Fulbrights. We're very excited about that.
They're awesome. Yeah, those actually have been set. There's a problem with the lag time in the Texas Global website. So I'm going to post those in the chat. And then also I'll, with a follow-up email to you, Mary, so that can be disseminated.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I mean, we might have people trickle in because more people did RSVP to this, but I think we should just maybe get started. We've all, Sonia, you came in a tad late. We've been introducing ourselves in the chat, if you want to do that. I'm, So I'm Mary Newberger, Bulgaria Fulbright alumnus, and now a professor of history at University of Texas. And also the director for the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies here. And so I really want to promote Fulbrights. And so there's so many new Fulbright opportunities that exist since way back when I got my Fulbright. It was pretty straight, bare bones kind of. Now there's all kinds of new programs that have come out of Fulbright. And so that's really exciting. I feel like there's new ones all the time that I haven't been able to keep track of. So we're lucky to have people from 3 different Fulbright commissions here with us today to talk about some of the different opportunities they have for getting Fulbrights in their countries. We're hoping to kind of get more students involved, hopefully faculty involved, and just increase our exchange with these countries using the Fulbright program. And so I'm going to start with the Fulbright Commissioner for Hungary, Mr. Karoli Yokai. Am I saying your last name incorrectly? How is it pronounced?
Close enough for Texas. because it's son.
I could say yokai. Maybe I'll put a nice Texas twang on it.
Yeah, you should. Okay.
So let me just make sure I have, okay, so you should be able to share screen if you need to. He's going to talk
No,
to us about opportunities in Hungary.
I won't do anything that fancy because
Okay.
I might embarrass myself, you know, so. Um, okay, I guess in the few minutes we have, I'm looking at the introductions. I guess we have PhD candidates up here, or future English teaching assistants, or postdocs.
Yeah, or anyone?
No one's nodding, so I don't.
Yeah, so for the students here, I think
Yeah.
there's 2 undergrad. I think they're all undergraduates, right? Are you guys all undergraduates? Yes, they're all undergraduates.
Okay, let me rephrase that. Then when you apply for Fulbright, you will be a graduate because you'll be applying for an
Yes.
English teaching assistant program position, or you'll be doing research, or you might be enrolling, or you might be working on your PhD portfolio and so forth, right?
Yes.
Okay, is that correct? Okay, cool. Well, anyway, we have about 10 to 12 student slots per year, for which we receive a short list from IIE of about 20, 25 out of maybe 40 applications, you know. So we only see half the applicants, and then we pick another half. So 10 to 12. Of those 10 to 12, you can say there are as many majors or areas of interest represented among those 10 people. 2 of them are English teaching assistants. 1 of them works in our office on advising Hungarian students on applying for Fulbright or any other U.S. type of university. And the other student, who's an English teaching assistant, works with Roma students, and they're usually sent out to one of these dorms established at one of the universities in the country. There are about 6 of them that specialize in Roma students. So these are usually first generation to graduate high school, and certainly first generation to attend university. And we have 9-month grants for students. The rest of them represent mathematics and music, a lot of independent projects. In other words, they're not taking courses, they may be working on a film. We had a guy looking for his grandfather, quite literally. His grandfather is someone he never met because he became grandpa long after grandma had left the country and gotten on a boat to come to America, and he never showed up in the port. So he was looking for old gentlemen between the age of 70 and 90 who could have been his grandfather, and he went around doing his interviews with people who met that description. And it was an amazing sociological project. At the same time, he was also taking a lot of pictures of buildings and nature and flowers and things and so on and so forth. So we have a lot of esoteric projects. We had one lady 2 years ago who worked on how do people redesign their block apartments, the 52 square meters or 55 square meters that all of you who've been in Central Europe have seen, these East German, 10-story apartment buildings. All the apartments are exactly the same, at least the floor plan. And she tried to knock on doors to ask people to show their apartments and how they would use different colors or different types of furniture or what they put on the wall. How do they try to disguise or hide the drabness of the exterior, by changing the interior. And it took her a few months to break the ice, as you can imagine. But then after that, people were lined up to try to get into her film, to be in her documentary film. And of course, then we have people who enroll in the Academy of Music, and they could be studying folk music or they could be studying classical music. We've seen both types. We've seen a lot of musicologists who come through to look at manuscripts, scores for Liszt or Bartók or any other, or modern contemporary conductors or other musicians. Some of them take master classes for violin at the Academy of Music or piano. So there's a huge range, but I would say that our student grantees tend to be slightly more mature. Very few of them are straight out of their undergraduate experience. And what I mean by that is that they may have had a little bit of Peace Corps, a little bit of Teach for America. They may have done a gap year someplace else. They may have worked someplace, even as an intern. That tends to produce more interesting applications. I don't know what the experience is in Bulgaria or Poland, but our student applicants tend to be a few years out of their undergraduate experience. In fact, we've had people in the student category in their 30s and 40s who had gone back to graduate school after time in the Army or career or motherhood or something like that. So we have like so-called unconventional, what do they call them? Non-traditional. So we've had non-traditional students as well in the student category. So there really isn't any anything that we can't imagine, coming to Hungary. And so those 10 students represent as many fields. Now, on the faculty side, we sort of reflect the strengths of the country. Again, music, math, the STEM fields, anything to do with the history of the region or geography, topography, and so forth. That's something that's unique to Hungary. I see my Polish colleague also nodding. I mean, there's certain reasons you come to that part of the world to do projects on, Roman baths that you couldn't do someplace else where the Romans didn't extend their empire. So you can't go there. You have to go where the Romans were, right? If you're studying Roman walls or fortifications or what have you. So we've had grad students working on the environmental impact of Roman fortifications and lost Roman cities in Hungary using, aerial photography and so forth. A really cool project. And that turned into a dissertation. So there is really no limit or no ideal candidate, except to say that our candidates student candidates tend to be slightly older than someone who's straight out of undergraduate experience, and they tend to reflect a lot of the we have had people from community colleges and a lot of the so-called less traditional Fulbright manufacturing schools. So we've had students from Ohio State and from the large public schools, certainly, but we've also had students from smaller colleges as well as so-called non top tier research institutions as well. And we kind of encourage that, actually, because they may be a better match for many reasons with their hosts in country. One bit of advice is that if someone doesn't answer your inquiry, it's not you. It's a cultural thing. So make sure you contact us, and we might help you. We might expedite the communication with whatever department or program or research institute that you want to visit. I guess that's all I'd like to say. Besides that, we have a nice list of alumni on our webpage. Feel free to contact them, both Americans as well as Hungarians. And you should also contact myself or my program officer, and these names and emails are in the IIE catalog, so you can find all the points of contact. I guess that's it. I don't want to use other people's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe in the Q&A you can talk more about it, but I thought some of my students might be interested in the policy Fulbright that you told me about in Hungary, which seems like a really interesting one for some of our policy.
I'll talk about that during the Q&A. I think it's more appropriate.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Angela, do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. I have a PowerPoint. I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but let me try. I can certainly send this to people afterwards. I'm afraid to make it full screen because I don't know if I'll be able to interact with Zoom. So I hope can people see this? Is this large enough?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so basically the Fulbright program in Bulgaria, we're a younger program. The commission was founded after the fall of communism, so the commission has existed since 1993. We're a mid-sized program. We have a big ETA program. We have 32 ETAs every year, working in high schools, primary English language high schools. So if you're interested in working with youth, if you have students that want to do youth development, it's a great place to get those skills. We have 5 student researchers a year, and I'll talk more specifically about that because I know that's our audience here, and then 5 scholars. So about 40 Americans come to Bulgaria every year. As Kari said, in all sorts of fields, we're really open. Of course, political science is a big interest in both scholars and students, international relations. So why Bulgaria? I think, we have a couple of things that I think might sell our program to your students who might be wondering. We have a very long orientation, a 10-day in-country orientation for the ETAs and students, because we really feel like you know, Bulgaria is not the easiest place to live, especially if someone hasn't had a lot of experience outside of America or Western Europe. And so we really put a lot of time and effort into the bonding of the cohort. We give intensive Bulgarian language lessons because you know it's not an easy language to learn in the US. We also do orientations for our scholars in both the fall and the spring. Having such a large cohort that's spread all over the country is a huge benefit for your research, because everywhere you go, you can stay with a Fulbrighter on their couch and use their local network to help you. So we also have a very large and active network of Bulgarian Fulbright alumni who we do events with regularly, and we really try to mix our Americans with the Bulgarian alumni and make some synergies there. We have throughout the year various cultural, educational, social activities, including a volunteer day, which really try and bring the Fulbright community together. We also have a robust network of partner organizations, NGOs, government institutions, universities, schools, museums. So as Karoi said, we like it when applicants reach out to us. It's not cheating. It's not, you know, trying to game the system. We actually appreciate when people reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking of applying for this. Is this an appropriate host institution? We can say, well, yes, but you might want to talk to this person or that person, or think about this other institution. Our staff is actually very open and welcomes those kinds of inquiries from scholars, students, and ETA candidates. We also have a lot of staff experience in supporting mental and physical health, and that's, you know, something I think is important, especially when we have students who might be going abroad for the first time, coming from a family where they might be a first-generation student and they're not used to the exchange programs. We also give mini grants once you're our grantee to encourage extracurricular activities, especially for the ETAs, but also the students. We feel that the Fulbright program should be, of course, your academic component is very important, but community engagement is also a really important way of fostering that cultural exchange. So we really encourage people to, you know, expand their Fulbright experience into extracurricular activities. And then we support our grantees to attend these pan-Fulbright events that you may have heard of, conferences, to have them feel part of a larger global community. Since there aren't too many scholars, I'm going to skip the core scholar program, but I will send Mary this information and hopefully she can distribute it to you. Let's go to the student grants, because I know that's probably the most interesting thing. So we have about 5 student grants every year. As Karoi said, often the strongest candidates are people who are either enrolled in an MA program or a PhD program, or have had a bit of experience, but we do take people straight out of undergrad if the project is very compelling. And I like to say, Jose, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Jose will be coming to Bulgaria next year as a student researcher, and he is currently a senior. So it just really depends on the project. And if you can convince us that you have the correct background and you're enthusiastic and this is going to lead to further career development, it's certainly not a deal breaker if you haven't had, you know, if you're straight out of undergrad. So the awards are for the academic year from 8 to 10 months. We have 3 core awards that could be in anything. Recently from UT, we had Alexei Damiansky, terrific young man who was working. He had our Romania and Bulgaria joint grant looking at civil society and protest movements in both of those countries. We also have a joint grant with Greece. So you spend 1 semester in Greece, 1 semester in Bulgaria, and that's good for people who in archaeology, history, music, things where the Fulbright country box may not quite be the right fit, because the Balkans, as we know, the borders are quite recent. So some people's projects fit better in a multi-country context. I have a flyer here, and this flyer was made to target students in archaeology. So this is archaeology fields that we really try and recruit for, because Bulgaria, after Italy and Greece, has the most finds and sites of anywhere in Europe. And now that it's getting more difficult to work in the Middle East and in Turkey, we're seeing a lot more interest in Bulgaria in terms of archaeology, but also art history. We have a number of grants. One grant that's specifically dedicated to archaeology and history, where you work with a local NGO, the Balkan Heritage Foundation. It's a little more structured grant, but then we also have open grants that can, for students in those fields. But let me see. Yeah, so we have the Bulgaria only research grants, and then we have joint Bulgaria Romania, joint Bulgaria Greece, and then this special archaeology history grant. For English teaching assistants, we have a big program. I think it's one of the biggest in the region. 32 awards a year teaching in high school. And the good thing for people to know is that we really work. This is not Fulbright light. Some of the ETA programs are a little bit notorious for you teach 2 hours a week, and then, you know, in Bulgaria you teach probably 20 hours a week. But it's, if you like teaching, it's a super rewarding experience because the kids love their teachers. They're really engaged. We have a speech and debate association that was started by our ETAs, and most schools have teams. So if you have people that are interested in forensics and have those skills, or in theater, please send them our way, because it's a really great way to work with the students outside of class. What was that? Anything else about the ETA program? Again, you don't have to have experience in the region. Teaching experience is great, but not necessary. You know, we have many different schools, so we try and match the students. If somebody doesn't have teaching experience, we'll put them in a school where we know there's more structure. If someone does have a lot of teaching experience, or they speak Russian, we have different places where we know that those skills will be a better fit. And so we really know our communities very well, and really work hard to get a variety of different types of ETAs accommodated in the various schools where we work. And this is where they are. They're all over Bulgaria. I mean, it's basically all over the map. They only teach Monday through Thursday. They teach a lot. I mean, but then they have a 3-day weekend every weekend. So if you're up here in Vidin, Silistera gets a little lonely. We put them together actually there. So you have time to travel and see your friends and see your cohort. So you hopefully won't be too isolated. And of course, some pictures of some extracurriculars. Working with Syrian refugees. One of our ETAs started a lacrosse team, working with Roma kids at an orphanage, at a soccer clinic. These are some of our kids in the speech and debate, a speech event. So basically, you know, we like to see people who have interest in the region, who are interested in working with youth outside of inside, but also outside of the classroom. That have maybe a community engagement project. We don't require our ETAs to do a research project. I know a lot of countries do require ETAs to have some kind of a research project, but just because of language barrier, I mean, almost nobody comes to Bulgaria knowing Bulgarian, so we can't really require an ETA to propose a feasible research project while they're doing their ETA work. But we do offer, you know, language training, and then we give 500 leva for the year to continue language. So we do try and encourage ETAs to get a basic working level of language. So that's the overview, and I'd be happy to answer any specific questions once we get to the Q&A section. So thanks.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I can clap out loud too. Okay, and so we have Alexandra Shaniawska, who is from the Polish Fulbright Commission.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have a brief presentation as well, so I will try to share my screen. I've done this before, so I'm not sure why.
Well, while we're waiting, I just want to say, Angela, wow, the Bulgarian Fulbright Commission has come a long way since 1995. Really exciting, everything you guys are doing.
Yeah,
I wish I could do mine over.
can, right? Once you wait 2 years, you're eligible again. So.
That's true, except now I want to go to Hungary or maybe Poland.
Okay,
There's
I'm
so
not
many
sure why it's
places.
not working. I'm really sorry.
It's not?
Can
That's
you can
odd.
see it, right?
No, we can't. No.
1 second. Okay.
Yes. Yay, it's
Okay,
working.
perfect. Okay, so very briefly, so last year we actually celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Fulbright program in Poland, which was a great year for us, and we're very happy that it happened last year, not this year. So Fulbright Poland was established in 1959, and we were actually the first country in the Eastern and Central Europe to participate in the program. Approximately 5,000 American and Polish alumni have benefited from the program since its inception. And each year we award over 100 grants. It's more or less 50-50 to Polish and American students. And we're committed to fairness, equity, and inclusion. And we celebrate the academic and professional achievements of our diverse family of Fulbrighters, which I think is an important thing to say, especially these days. Why Poland? It's a very competitive higher education system with nearly 400 universities and institutions of higher education, and it's an educational system that was established in 1364, so it's been a long time. Relatively low living costs. While living standards are comparable with those in Western European countries, the cost of living in Poland, even in bigger cities, is significantly lower, which I think it's important for American students, scholars who are also choosing their Fulbright grants to remember that generally there are differences between the Eastern European region and Western Europe. There is a high English language proficiency, and English is widely used at the university level. So there are no language requirements in general for any of our grants, of course, depending on the project, because if somebody's specifically researching archives and specializing in Polish history, Jewish history, then I mean, it depends on particular project, but ETA level, you do not need to speak Polish. We, however, offer complimentary Polish classes to anyone who's interested every year. Unique location in the heart of Europe, easy access to other European countries, and rich geographical diversity and cultural heritage. General grant benefits for all of our grants include a monthly stipend, a round-trip travel allowance, also for family members, private healthcare, administrative and academic support, financial support for the accompanying family, a one-time allowance to cover relocation and settling in costs in Poland, and a one-time allowance to cover research, book, and conference fees. These are the major ones. And of course, I will be happy to send you this presentation so you can go over it later on. The first grant installment is paid a couple of months prior to grant start date. We're really making sure that this is happening now, so you can actually already use the money, the grant money, to plan your trip and all of your primary expenses for relocation and stuff. Other grant benefits are belonging to the Fulbright Poland community. As Angela was saying earlier, we're 10 people staff, and we're very devoted to helping out our grantees every year. They stay well connected throughout the length of their grants. Among others, each year the Commission organizes a 2 to 4 day orientation sessions, 4 days for ETAs, 2 days for scholars and specialists, as soon as everyone arrives in Poland, which is usually late September. We always host a Thanksgiving celebration, a 2-day mid-year meeting, which happens around, this year was the very beginning of February, and the graduation ceremony beginning of June. In addition to teaching or conducting research, our grantees also have the opportunity to participate in a variety of cultural and networking activities organized by various Fulbright commissions in Europe, including the annual EU-NATO seminar in Belgium and Berlin seminar in Germany, as well as engage in public diplomacy events across Poland. And those public diplomacy events, everyone is open to participate. We encourage everyone to participate. Most of our grantees are really active. There are events that are organized by the US Embassy and the US Consulate in Poland. We have several American corners. So students, scholars, ETAs are welcome to deliver lectures, to organize any kinds of meeting sessions. Our ETAs in particular and US students also engage in Education USA program. As part of Education USA, we're organizing school visits to high schools, primary schools, so whoever's interested. These are usually short lessons that the grantees give on American culture, history, whatever they're interested in. So usually around Halloween, there are sessions on Halloween or sessions about American football, film. So this is also open, and Education USA sponsors, of course, all of those visits. So I'm just going to maybe start with ETA, the Fulbright English Teaching Assistant Program. So in Poland, we place recent US college graduates and young professionals at the university level institutions, so it's universities and institutions of higher education across Poland, which declared their willingness to host candidates and were selected through an open competition. So we are matching English teaching assistants depending on their interests, their educational background and experiences with interested institutions. They teach and co-teach practical and specialized English language classes for two academic semesters at those universities. Practical English language classes, all levels according to the Bologna standard. Specialized language classes, for instance, business, medicine, biology, chemistry, political science. We actually have a lot of interest among pre-med students in the US recently who would like to gain some teaching experience at the university level before they enter medical school in the US. And all of those, of course, are discussed and depend on the needs of the host institutions. We accept applications from all fields. So we have ETAs. We usually have recent graduates. There are cases, so I think it's a little different than Hungary. It's usually, this past year, it was, I think all of the 10 ETAs were actually very recent college graduates. And we are strongly encouraging candidates with teaching experience to apply. Of course, anyone can apply, but we encourage anyone who has any TEFL or TESOL experience, so teaching English as a second language, or teaching experience in other fields. And our ETAs in particular, mostly because they are more or less, I think, the same age, everyone stays really connected throughout the length of the grant, so they travel together. But ETAs are always the 10 people. It's usually 10 people every year. They're becoming almost like a family. So they're just sending pictures from all their trips, and it's always a very, very nice supportive cohort, and they're very, very enthusiastically engaging in all those different activities. Fulbright US Student Program. So it's for college seniors, graduate students, young professionals, and artists. They can conduct their own research projects for 2 academic semesters, 10 months, at Poland's best universities or any other non-university institutions, such as research centers, labs, and archives. Proposals are welcome from candidates in all disciplines with established relations with the host institution. And as my colleague was mentioning, we're also helping out. We cannot suggest any institutions, but if there are any inquiries or any problems with reaching out to specific places, we definitely help out in this matter. And we're strongly encouraging women in STEM fields to apply. All candidates, as I mentioned, are welcome, but this is kind of a priority for the Commission right now. Each year we award around 12 grants, plus minus 2, 3. This year, so we had US student researchers working in many different fields. Here on the screen you have Jaman Thomas, who's doing a bacteriophage research. Very interesting because he found a research institution in Wrocław where this type of research really originated. So it was more of an unusual way of picking Poland. We have a lot of especially US students and ETAs who are somewhat related to the regions, students with Polish roots, students interested in Polish Jewish history. I have a quote here from Frankie Lyons, for instance, who studies Eastern Europe, and he specifically chose Poland because of her research. She researched Jewish history in Warsaw. So I'll be happy to answer any other questions related to those specific programs in the Q&A session. And the last thing I would like to mention is kind of like a profile of, how does the application process looks like and who are we looking for. So the primary angle is candidates who demonstrate a need to conduct their projects specifically in Poland and in the preferred institutions. We're looking for feasible and well-described projects that contain research methodologies or syllabus reflecting effective pedagogical approaches. So basically, it's somebody who can speak clearly why they want to do their Fulbright grant, particularly in Poland. So it's the what, how, and why that really matters, and who can express the impact of the grant on their plans and career, which means that they can basically situate how the Fulbright fits within their larger plan for their lives. Candidates who exhibit ambassadorial values and skills to further the goal of cultural understanding while in Poland. So people who are really open and interested in becoming cultural ambassadors, and who are willing to engage in those different public diplomacy events. If we had to, as I mentioned, we welcome candidates from all fields, but we are prioritizing the support of research that focuses on technology and knowledge transfer. So we're trying to get more candidates in those fields. And we're also looking, so we're looking holistically at applications, and we're also aiming at advancing diversity and inclusion in terms of geographical location, represented institutions and disciplines, to make sure that all different fields every year are represented, socioeconomic background, and of course, gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender expression, and ability. So I will be happy to answer all of your questions, and I will send you the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Okay, can you unshare? There we go. All right, well, thank you so much. Now I feel like I'm inspired to go to Poland after that one, but I can't go everywhere, but I've spent time in all three of these countries. They're so beautiful, and they're so fascinating in terms of their history and culture. So I'm really excited to work with any of you students who might think about going to one of these countries. I'd be happy if you reach out to me directly to help you brainstorm about what kind of creative projects you might want to come up with. We've heard a little bit about what these different programs have to offer, some of the various things they're specifically looking for. The ETA program sounds like it's probably the least kind of competitive option. Is it possible for students to apply both for ETA and for the student program at the same time? No.
You have to choose. You can't even do two countries at once. You have to do one application.
One thing. Okay. Yeah. That's important to keep in mind. But the project, the student or researcher category allows you a different kind of latitude to do creative projects, to travel around the country, to work with different institutions. So, depending on if you have a compelling project, and for those, I know that language skills are definitely a plus, but not necessarily required, depending on what your project is. And definitely, it was a while back, but so Bulgarian and Hungarian are not commonly taught in the United States. Polish as well, but it's more common. So I think the countries where the language isn't taught in the United States, they're more likely to be forgiving if you don't come in with the language, is my kind of impression. Yeah, but it's nice to put into your project that you will study while you're there. Is that true?
measure it with your, with what you're proposing to do. If you're proposing to work with, say, NGOs and so forth, okay, you can assume that most people will speak English at a level that you can do an academic interview. If you're working with a marginalized community somewhere in the provinces, then you're probably going to need a high level of language skills. So it just really depends on the project.
Right.
Yeah,
Carolyn?
I like to chime in on that because I mean the language skill for everyday survival is something that you can pick up, using these online, courses that are available. And since there's all this time till 2021, right? There's plenty of time to do that. And we also give, some basic language lessons and also offer to pay for language lessons for the whole time that the student is in country. But the language requirement is only looked at closely if it's needed for the work, period. I mean, so if you're going to look at manuscripts that are in Latin and German, which you may have to do if you're going back in time. We have a student studying Ottoman Hungary. Now, guess what? He's taking a lot of Turkish courses because there's a lot of material that's in, Ottoman Turkish in the archives that he needs to look at. And if he can't read that stuff and doesn't have Latin, he's not going to go anywhere. You see? So often the research project drives the language requirement. So having the language alone is not enough. It helps. On the other hand, it doesn't exclude you because if you're a musician, you count to 4, right? And then you're pretty much there, right? It depends on what you're playing, naturally. Sorry.
And can I actually, this kind of touches on a related topic. I think there is a general perception about Fulbright that if you have too much experience in the country, that you're not going to be selected. And I think that might be true for big countries like Spain, Germany, where it's possible to become a fluent speaker of Spanish or German without ever having gone there. Whereas for countries that are smaller and the languages are less accessible, I'd say in the US educational system, we certainly don't see previous experience in Bulgaria as being a deal breaker. I mean, of course, if you spent 20 years living in Bulgaria, you won't be eligible. But if you came, for a summer and did a volunteer project, and from that you had, you were inspired, or you did, say, maybe a semester abroad and then want to come back, that for our program is not a problem whatsoever. So I think there's a little bit of a misconception from the big programs that if you have experience in the country, then you won't be considered, and that's not the case in our.
Yeah, and I also wanted to add, don't worry about being stuck, quotation marks, in one country, because we do support inter-country travel and not just for scholars, but also for students. And there's the Berlin seminar, there are events in Brussels, the NATO seminar, EU seminar. And if you have a legitimate reason to go do research in an archive, in a related institution, then we'll work with the other commissions and try to scrounge up money to send you to do your research there, to spend your weekend in a different country. And because there aren't really big distances now, of course it's impossible to go anywhere still, and for a while it's loosening up pretty much. But the point is that our grantees tend to take off every weekend and they're someplace else, taking advantage of cheap flights and trains and so on and so forth. And they even do that for their research. I mean, not just for fun, as long as we know, because we need to make sure their insurance is turned on for that particular country. But the point is that they shouldn't worry about trying to apply to several countries or trying to optimize where they apply, because it is possible to have projects that are sort of shared among countries. If you have for example, you're working on folk music, well, guess what? You might need to cover a pretty broad swath of area, and then we'll work with each other to try to take care of any need like that.
Are there any questions from the student participants or anyone else? You can feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat if you'd like. Oh, James?
Yeah, I heard you mention public policy or any policy opportunities. I was wondering if any of the people that have those within their program could speak to that.
Yeah, we actually have a joint grant with an organization that's based at Corvinus University in Budapest. It's called the Untitled Knowledge Center. It's named after the first prime minister after the end of communism. And we've had 5 students take part in this already, and it's a 1-year-long appointment, practically, 9-10 months. They give you an apartment, they give you a desk at a research institution, and they're working on transatlantic issues, on translating Henry Kissinger volumes, on putting on conferences at the NATO and the EU level, and so on and so forth. So the student gets to work on their own project and has access to experts that are part of that orbit. And they also get to work on actually co-organizing conferences, or they may be asked to edit publications or to help their peers work on papers and so on and so forth. So we've had quite a few very successful projects done at the so-called Knowledge Center, and that's all on the the catalog as one of our awards. And people might ask about, well, this is a general student question I hear all the time. Well, should I pick one of these really specialized awards, or should I just throw my name in the hat for like a general award? Now, usually the specialized awards have few people, who dare apply. Oh, wait, you just moved. James just moved from one place to the other. Got it, that. Okay.
Where did he go? There he is. I
no,
know.
He's there, but he's like, Bam! I was looking at him and he moved.
Jumped up. I know. I don't
okay,
know why.
all right. Okay. So anyway, so the point is that students or scholars are afraid to apply for a specific grant. I would say you should apply for the specific grant, because there may be only 2 of you or 3 of you, or you may be the only one. And then you're not really competing with the other people. You're sort of competing against yourself. If you're good enough by yourself, you'll most likely be selected. Now, what if you sort of apply for a general grant, like general research in social science or something like that? You may say, oh, this person is really good for that specific grant. You see? So sometimes we try to steer people once we have their application, once they're on the short list. And that's the biggest part of our agony. And I think my 2 colleagues will agree with me, is when you're down with the short list, you have 10 slots and you have 15 names. And you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to optimize everything? Field diversity, geographic diversity in the country, geographic diversity from the US, first-time scholars, first generation, and all that stuff. And then you look at, well, is there a great demand for that particular field in the country? And you're going to match all that, and you say, well, how much money do I have? And it's a real agony for us. So the more specific you are, the more narrow your project, the stranger your project in many senses, the bigger your chances. I mean, we had one woman who wanted to come work on bathhouse culture. Okay? I mean, that's pretty unique. She ended up doing something slightly different, but we couldn't say no to someone who wants to sit in thermal baths the whole time she's there interviewing people. I mean, that is so cool. Or the woman who worked on the public housing, the block housing project. I mean, we never had someone do that. Or the guy who was looking for his grandfather. I mean, quite literally looking for his grandfather, or someone who could have been his grandfather. These are the kind of strange projects that we tend to support. And that's how you get from the pool of 15 down to 10, which is, I don't know about Alexandra or Angela, how do you narrow it down, from the short list to the really, really, really short list? And this is where I think you can make a difference if you know these little tricks, which we're just telling you right now. I mean, this will help you distinguish yourself from the pool by trying to be as specialized and as unique as possible. People often also ask me all the time, well, do I need a concrete letter of invitation? Well, for students, we don't require it. I know it's really hard to get. And sometimes we try to match the students with the best possible hosts. If they have a good project, then they sort of say, well, I wrote to these 3 people, but they never answered me. We understand that. You're not going to be disqualified if so-and-so big professors don't answer you. They don't answer us either, right? So, it's like, so we can understand that. We feel your pain there, and then we try to match people because we know the other side, we know the host side. Now, an easy way of getting rejected, you know what that is? Really easy way of getting rejected, even if you make it past the national screening, is if we read your project statement and you can tell you just clipped a bunch of newspaper articles together and say, well, these are the top 3 problems. and you haven't done your homework. You haven't gotten down to the brass tacks saying, this is the problem I want to look at, and these people, so-and-so and so-and-so could possibly help me. I've contacted them and they didn't answer, but I'm going to, keep on it. That's good. But, we get a lot of these general like op-ed type applications where you can tell they kind of cut and pasted it at the last minute. And they might be really well qualified because they're from a good school and they have good grades. Oh, grades don't matter to me. I don't even look at the transcript. Do you two look at the transcript, Angela, Alexandra? You look at the transcript?
No.
No, who looks at the transcript?
It's not the leading factor, but we definitely look at it, And
All right.
we give people, we do interviews, which is important. So we ask people, can you put this in a context? If there's one semester or something, maybe there was a family situation. So it wouldn't be a deal breaker, but at least we give the student an opportunity to put it in the context for us, yeah, that's how we whittle our list down is interviews. And I don't know if you guys do that as well. We interview most of the student candidates. Jose was just on the hot seat a few months ago, and he did an excellent job. I think a couple tips for that is do not overestimate your language ability, because you probably will be asked to speak Bulgarian. And he was great. He also wowed a very surly board member with his knowledge of Bulgarian history. So I'd say, going into an interview, make sure, as Karoi said, do your homework. Imagine, the sort of general questions they might ask you that are, kind of within the same semantic field as your proposal. I think, be well prepared. Make sure you've reread your own application, because sometimes I think people don't remember it's what you submitted in September, the interviews in February. You might not even recall. So make sure that the interview is very critical for us. So I'd say definitely take it seriously. I don't know, Jose, you want to comment on your interview experience? I hope you're not still traumatized.
No, not at all. What was funny is that, just because I had been able to go to the conference in Bulgaria, I thought I had a pretty good handle on what the questions were going to be. And then when I actually got to the interview, it wasn't anything like I thought. All the questions were very particularly about the project. And I thought everyone had told me it was going to be more focused on community engagement, but I guess I was lucky in that sense that the project was interesting enough that everyone had a very particular questions about it. So yeah, just be really prepared to talk about the project in depth.
Yeah, we do interviews as well. And this is the point for us to actually see you as a candidate. As my colleagues were saying, I think it's pretty similar for all the programs. And I mean, whenever there are interviews, that this is actually a moment for you to speak for yourself. And we're really interested to see you as a whole person, your research, how it all comes together, your experience, and what do you want to do with your life later on. So specifically for us, it's really important, to see how, why did you choose Poland, right? Why do you decide to do this research here? And also, how do you want to contribute, to the Fulbright community in general? This is the interview for us is also a very important stage to check that ambassadorial skills and values that students, ETAs bring to the program. This is where, everyone can have a chance to actually see themselves doing more than just either the research or teaching, right? So this is definitely the most important step of the application process, especially given since the first steps, right, of the program for US grantees are administered by IAE. So we already get a specific pool of candidates.
And I'd love to just chime in here. A Fulbright on an UT campus, which is one of the reasons we've been so successful, is we have an interview process in September. So that's why there's an early deadline for the grant submissions. Now this is for the IIE and the ETAs. I just want to, put that out there. And then what happens is as students put in their applications, Rebecca then organizes pods of professors. So you actually will then be scheduled to do an interview on campus. And what we do here is our interviewers mirror what happens at the national level, except you get to see us face to face. So there'll be one person that may know a lot about Bulgaria or Hungary, or at least has, been there in a Fulbright, somebody else who's in your field, and then somebody else who's like way off your field, which is a reflection of what it's like at the national level. Through that process, you'll have about 3 or 4 faculty who have read your application, and they will ask you questions, and it's an opportunity to dialogue. But at the same time, Rebecca or the Fulbright administrator will have taken your application materials offline. As a result of the interview, you will pick a mentor who will then work with you on your application based on feedback from this small little interview pod. And that mentor will also write a letter of evaluation that goes with your application materials. You revise, you go back and forth with your mentor, and then your materials are sent up to the national committee. And so it's just, it's kind of helpful to know what that experience will be like. It might seem kind of tedious, but in fact, it means you get a lot of eyes. And because of the UT process, you're actually going to be face to face with the kind of people that you'll never get to see at the national level. We rarely at UT turn down an application. Most of the time it's because the person themselves didn't finish, decide they couldn't go through with the revisions. I would say that we have, worked really closely to send these forward. Then, in order to go abroad, the national committee will pick twice the number of applicants that would be accepted in Hungary or Poland or Bulgaria. So those countries would be able to do their screening and decide of that pool which group they want to accept. So I just wanted to mention that sort of front-loaded process.
Yeah, and I put some of the deadlines here in the chat so you could see, which is why we're doing this now. Because September 4th, it's a quick turnaround into the fall semester. So it's good for you to be thinking about it over the summer, be emailing people. Like I said, feel free to email me, email Sonia, and we can help you kind of think through. It's a pretty short proposal, but is it true last time there were sort of 2 short statements that they did? Like one kind of personal statement and one sort of project?
Right.
Statement?
It's one page and it's very specific, nothing smaller than 12-point font, 1-inch margin.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So one page personal statement, single space. Then ET is 1 page project statement, or for the research and study, those are 2 pages max. And what I recommend, and again, anyone who's interested, please sign up for our info sessions and please sign up for the grant writing workshops. What I suggest is writing both of those at the same time, your personal statement and your grant or your teaching statement, because you want to show how each informs the other without repeating information. So now is a perfect time to start brainstorming and drafting.
Yes. Okay. I just was getting here. I'm going to put in the chat some of the dates for our summer sessions. We have information sessions here in June and July, and then we have writing workshops listed. And so keep those in mind. I think it's really helpful to go to these kind of things and get this feedback, but also feel free to reach out to professors. I think Jose, I think you did a lot of that, right? Kind of works with a couple faculty members.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't really know a whole lot about Fulbright up until maybe 2 weeks before the national deadline. I was fortunate enough to be already working with a couple of professors who were Fulbright alumnus, and one of the professors was from Bulgaria, so that helped out quite a bit. So yeah, it helps a lot.
Are you still going this fall? Is it fall for you?
I'm waiting on January.
Oh, January. Okay.
Yeah, which I did have a question. Should we be reconsidering like reapplying or what? I'm not entirely, because I have heard from other people say like, oh, you should reapply just in case. So I'm not entirely sure.
We're all being optimistic. No, I think we're going to move forward in January 2021.
But will you defer if, like, say, if someone has it for January? What will happen if, you know, there's travel restrictions? Will they be able to defer it?
Generally, Fulbright doesn't allow deferrals, and so I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But the hope and the intention at this point is that by early 2021, the pandemic will be sufficiently under control that we will be able to roll out the program at that time. I don't know, Garoy, do you want to join in here?
This is like, you know, Kremlinology, you know, who is standing next to Brezhnev, and, you know, why is, what's his name, Kosygin 2 steps behind him, and Gromyko, what happened to him, you know, or, okay. No, quite seriously, we have absolutely no clue what would happen if in December we find out that the global pandemic is going to continue for another year, and the State Department freaks out and declares all of the world a big danger zone, and that's it. I mean, we really cross our fingers. Now, we have been receiving some advice from our State Department folks saying, well, why don't people just, you know, resubmit the same thing they did for 2021, and then we will know, you know, by January that, you know, it's a quote unquote, you know, fake application, and then the IIE will just chuck them out, and, you know, and then, oh, but if they're needed, then they already have their application in the pipeline. I don't know. I'm not sure. I have no idea. But we're certainly planning on, you know, having all of our grantees. We're going to have, you know, 25 Americans show up in January. We'll have that many Hungarians off to the U.S. in January. And if it's delayed by a few months, that may happen. Who knows? You know, because of the winter season and so on. But I mean, how many times do you get this? What is it called? Black Swan effect, right? I mean, you only have one crash of 2008, right? Is that true? I don't know. You know, there are only so many times a big volcano will explode, like the Icelandic volcano, right? I almost got stuck in India because of that, you know, back in 2010, I think. You know, so it's like, how many times can these things happen? I mean, imagine what would happen if we have to miss a whole academic year. Then people will ask us, well, why do you have a commission with 6 people? You guys should just, you know, get a different job. You know what I mean? So you know, we're worried about it too, right? Put it that way.
Of course.
But I think you should basically, if you're into like risk minimization, then you resubmit your things. Make sure, one thing that the State Department people did tell us was, well, make sure that your letters of recommendation are like, have a fresh date on it. So it's not that obvious that this is the same thing as being and maybe your letter of invitation. And it's true that the deadlines, I mean, are so soon. I mean, it's really soon for both scholars and for U.S. students, right? This is just a few months from now. And maybe, you know, we're facing a similar dilemma with our grantees who want to start studies in the States in September. Will your campus be open? Will UT Austin be open in September? Can someone say yes to that right now?
It will be open.
But for real, I mean, really open.
But for real, I don't know.
Okay. See, so we have that situation as well.
Yeah.
Some of our people have to, you know, defer until January to start an LLM program, for example, or might be asked to take part in like a hybrid type of, you know, training, or maybe take you know, I call them correspondence courses, but it's e-learning. Taking e-learning in September, which is not quite the same. It doesn't have any of the cultural exchange aspect, which is what we're in business to do, right? So our grantees are, and the other thing that hasn't yet been resolved as well, will the U.S. embassies be issuing J-1 visas? Because their offices are closed. And I think within a few, I guess, Angela, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to decide this month what they're going to do about the travel warning and the status of, you know, issuing J-1 visas and so forth, because it takes, you know, as you know, a few months for that to work its way through various offices. So there are a lot of known unknowns out there. Who knows who came up with that expression? The known unknowns and the known knowns and the unknown unknowns. It was Secretary of Defense. Who was it?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do.
Oh, I can make a great doo-wop song though, right?
He used to be a congressman. Congressman from Illinois, Rumsfeld.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Secretary Rumsfeld. Yeah. So there are a lot of known unknowns out there.
I like that.
I guess that kind of dates me,
Mhm.
having heard that when I was already an adult. So I guess that makes me kind of old. But anyway, no. So the point is that what is your contingency plan? I guess for the people who have grants now. I mean, are you thinking about putting in like not a fake application, but sort of a safety application? Jose, are you thinking about that, or anyone
Yeah,
else?
I was considering it at this point just to be sure, because I mean, if worst case scenario, it's nice to have
Mhm.
that. I mean, that bit of what's it called, security. I
Yeah.
talked it over with the professor, and they said, I mean, you got accepted once, so why not try again? So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, it can't hurt at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably just do it and kind of roll with the punches and see what happens.
Okay, well, we're a little bit over time, but I wanted to thank all of you for coming, and I wanted to especially thank our guests from Poland, Bulgaria, and Hungary. Next time I'm in one of those countries, I'll let you know.
Yes, please.
Hopefully it'll be soon, but hopefully we can send some of our students or faculty your way, and we would also love to host some of them coming our way. So this has been tape recorded, and anyone who wants it, we can provide it. Those links should be copyable, everything that's been put in the chat. We can also send you the PowerPoints if you guys are willing to share those. Once someone in here did ask for a copy. If you're willing to share those, we can send those to you. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you again, and everybody have a nice day. I hope to
Thank
see
you,
you
Mary,
all
so much
soon.
for organizing.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for hosting this.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Jose, Sonia.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Angela.
Bye, Karoy. Bye, Alexandra.
Bye.
Bye.